Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live, brought to you by NordVPN. My name is Daniel Caw. I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sports Laurel and Hardy, Keith Jackson and Scott McDermott. Keith?
Evening, Daniel. Evening. It's been a long old season, hasn't it?
It's been long. I've only used that one 4 or 5 times, but I thought I'd recycle it. Scott, how you doing?
I'm good. Still don't know who's Laurel and who's Hardy though. That's fine.
I'll give you a clue.
We can work it out. We'll get the bowler hats out later. Keith, when I woke up this morning, I was thinking to myself, it might be a bit quiet tonight, nothing to talk about. Come lunchtime, Hearts changed all that. Pretty remarkable statement from them.
Yeah, a couple of events today. Wasn't there? Tony Bloom gave an interview to a national broadcaster, and that was interesting in itself because he used the words that one or two of the Hearts players were assaulted. At the end of the championship decider against Celtic at the weekend, I think he needs to be careful with his words. I think that, we've seen loads of different video. There was, everybody seemed to have their camera phones out. It's difficult. I've not seen an incident that I don't know. There is people are coming into contact with each other. There are skirmishes you can see. I think you might need to be careful with his word in there. But then Hearts, following that, put out a statement. The Tony Bloom interview felt a bit off the cuff. The Hearts statement felt like anything but that. Mm-hmm. It felt as if it had been really carefully drafted and calmly put together. And it makes some really strong points.
I can put the Hearts statement up, Keith, if you want, for folk to read it.
Yeah, well, you could read it out yourself, but
I read it a wee bit if that's just so folk know what was said. You can see it on your screen there. The part I'll read down at the bottom. It says we are aware of highly irresponsible comments made publicly this week, which appear to seek to defend those who entered the pitch on Saturday and undermine the gravity of the situation. Those remarks carry dangerous implications, and we call upon the football authorities to ensure that this matter is addressed with the seriousness it demands and with the full cooperation of all involved. It's been an excellent season for Heart and Midlothian. However, it represents the very beginning of a long-term sustained success. We look ahead to next season with confidence, supported as ever by the exceptional backing of our fans. I mean, that bit there, the third paragraph there, Keith, I mean, that is clearly aimed at Martin O'Neill.
It is, but I'm going to be honest with you, you've missed a line there, Dan.
Sorry.
Because the really important stuff, the real nitty-gritty in this statement is in the first couple of parts.
Aye.
I think they have mentioned the premature ending of the match. So now, what did we say last night, Dan? I said that Hearts received the audio communications from the officials on Sunday, and they held back on putting a statement like this one out, which I think they'd planned to do on the Sunday. So they've had the audio, they've had time to digest it, to go through it, probably with a fine-tooth comb. And last night I said to you, look, it might well be that all the answers they're looking for are contained in the audio and they can move on and everybody can move on and there's no further issue. It looks as if the contrary has happened to that they've heard the audio, and despite having the audio, they feel there are questions that still need answering from the authorities. They've referred to the premature ending of the game, and later in that same statement, they talk about the officials not being the ones who decided when the game was over. Mm-hmm. These are really... I get the feeling, and I can understand that there'll be Celtic fans out there saying, this just feels like people that can't accept that Hearts won the title. Celtic won the title. But it's not. This isn't about Celtic. Yes, it's their supporters in their stadium, but it's everything around that. This isn't nobody's investigating Celtic's actions here. It's fundamental to the game that decisions have been made here and the rules have to be applied. And I think, despite listening to the audio, Hearts clearly believe there are further questions which need addressed by both the SFA, who are in charge of the referees, and the SPFL. The SPFL put out a statement on the Sunday morning, and it was in that statement that the match wasn't abandoned, that referee Don Robertson made the call, and that had been clarified before the trophy presentation. But as I said to you, I've just felt a little bit uncomfortable with everything around this story since the weekend. I was hoping, part of me, that Hearts would having received the audio, been given all the answers that they felt were required, and that they would be satisfied with what they heard on the tape. And quite clearly that's not the case. Now, where this ends, I don't know, Dan. I really don't know. But it does feel as if the plot has just been significantly thickened in the last few hours. I don't know how it feels.
No, I totally agree, Jacko. Look, I understand Celtic fans and the SPFL probably, they just want this to go away. They just want the season ended. Nobody's arguing the fact that Celtic won the title.
Listen, seeing that, Scott, seeing that, just before you go on, I think I should make it clear as well. It's my understanding, I don't think there's any appetite here for anybody, Hearts included, or especially Hearts, to demand a replay or to ask for proof that the game was abandoned and to be awarded a 3-0. There's no appetite for that I'm aware of. I don't think that's the case. But I do think there are procedures here that need to be examined. And I think they're right to do that. I don't believe that this is a case that Hearts want the title taken off Celtic and awarded to them, or they want a replay, or they want the last 30 seconds or 1 minute, whatever this time lapse is. I don't think there's an appetite for any of that, but I think there is a real desire to examine the process that led us to this point. And I think that's perfectly reasonable.
They want accountability and, if required, punishment. For what they feel they had to go through in terms of their players at the end of that game at the weekend. And I agree with Keith. I thought when Hearts got the audio, given what the SPFL had already said about the referee calling the game, I thought once Hearts get the audio, that might be the end of it. They would just need to suck it up and accept that that's what happened. But this statement tonight, Jacko read a wee bit out there. I mean, that clearly contradicts what the SPFL have previously said about the ref, Don Robertson, the guy that ended the game. As far as Hearts are concerned, the pitch invasion ended the game, and they're no happy about it. And I just think it's almost like, I was saying to you off air, it's almost like Hearts, they've gathered all the information, they've got the audio, they maybe know about certain things that happened behind the scenes that we don't, and they're almost trying to tempt the SPFL and the authorities out into saying something or doing something, knowing fine well they've got this this heap of information, and they'll be able to go back with that. And I just think it's almost like they've put it in the ball in the authorities' court now, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it pans out. I do think that the Tony Bloom statement, like Keith, I agree, it felt very off the cuff, a bit rushed. In terms of that, I agree with you. I think there's clearly confrontation on the pitch between fans and players. Whether you could go the full hog and say players were assaulted, only the Hearts players will know that. The people behind the scenes at Hearts will know that. So I think Tony Bloom's got to be careful. But I agree that that statement feels like a big moment in terms of this row that's obviously developing between the authorities and Hearts, and it doesn't, as much as Celtic fans and the league want it to go away, I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
I think after what happened at Celtic Park on the Saturday, Hearts went straight back to Tynecastle, and I believe that James Anderson and Tony Bloom were there as part of the travelling party, and I think that they were incandescent. Now, we're talking about really clever, well-connected, wealthy guys in these two. They could make it really uncomfortable for the authorities here. And it seems to me, having read that statement, that is the full intention. So, as I said, where it goes from here, not sure. The other part, Daniel, that you mentioned they're quite clearly calling out Martin O'Neill's comments on national broadcaster when he kind of said, what are the fans meant to do, stay in their seats? To which I think the answer is yes. That's pretty much what they are supposed to do. And they're wanting, clearly, that Martin O'Neill's dragged over the coals for his comments. That, I think, is of secondary importance to the bigger issue. But it's another thing that looks as if it's going to rumble on now, doesn't it? If there was a feeling on Monday after Hearts had not put out that second statement that this might just all calm down now and everybody heads off into the summer and looks forward to the World Cup. I think that was how I was thinking about it on the Monday, that Hearts had declined to put that statement out. I thought there must be something in there that they've heard that has satisfied them. As I said at the start, that this statement suggests that the contrary is true.
Yeah. We've got, as you can probably imagine, guys, a plethora of comments coming in on this, all over the whole topic. I'll throw a few at you just now. Foxy simply says, release the audio to the public. I think a lot of fans would be keen to hear that.
I said that last night. I think that would be helpful. Aye. I think because then everybody gets a feeling. Now, bear in mind how chaotic all that was. Aye. And I think there has to be a realisation as well that in a really frantic, chaotic situation like that, where there's potentially security risks, and you know, I don't blame anybody. I wouldn't expect somebody to be sitting there with a rule book. But, you know, there will be an element of human error in here somewhere, because these are extraordinary scenes in an extraordinary situation to have to deal with. So I wouldn't expect people to be, you know, spitting the rule book out their mouth at that point and understand. But I think if the audio comes out, then you would get more of a feel for that. People might be a little bit more understanding of the difficulties involved in the situation. Do the police get involved? Is it taken out of the hands of the officials? These are all questions, and I think that is probably a key question that Hearts will be asking. Was this a decision taken by the police?
Aye.
And not by your officials? I think that probably strikes to the crux of the matter.
Surely if the audio, Keith, cleared everything up and it was quite clear that Don Robertson made that decision to end the game, if the audio cleared that up, surely it would be out there by now. There's no reason why it's not out there, because clearly, as Hearts have alluded to in their statement, they feel that that's not what's happened. There's been, whether it's the police or whoever, it doesn't seem to me, if it was a clear case of Don Robertson blowing the whistle or saying at some point, right, the game is over, I think that audio would be out there by now, because certainly for the league and the authorities' point of view, they would feel that would clear a lot of it up and take a lot of it.
I think the authorities, the SFA, clearly were hoping that was the case, though, when they gave it to Hearts.
Aye.
They thought that this should kind of not fan the flames, the opposite, pour water on the flames here and kind of cool the whole situation down. But clearly that's not, because the feeling that whatever it is that Hearts were looking for in that audio, well, they haven't found it. Otherwise, they wouldn't feel the need to subsequently write to the SFA and to the SPFL asking further questions and demanding answers. And I think they demanded them quick answers as well from that statement.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh there, but George's comment I've just read. Kenny McLean's goal against Denmark, the final whistle wasn't blown, so we're not going to the World Cup. Don't bring that up, George. Let's keep that quiet. I mean, bloody hell.
Well, look, do you know that's an interesting point? Steve Clark mentioned it yesterday. Scotland beat Denmark with a goal from the halfway line to win that game and qualify for the World Cup. There was no pitch invasion.
Aye, true. Aye, good point.
And I'm pretty sure that there was a final whistle blown after that one. Of course there was.
And somebody was saying, another comment came up there about Hearts had won the league at Tynecastle. Do you think their fans would have invaded the pitch? They might have, but you'd like to think they'd have waited till the game finished first. I mean, that's the key point.
That comes back to what I said originally. That I'm uncomfortable if that game has came to an early conclusion because of mob rule, and I don't think any of us, whether you're a Celtic fan, a Rangers fan, a Hearts fan, a journalist, a commentator, I don't think any of us can be comfortable with that scenario. If that is indeed what happened, that game stopped because of mob rule, we cannot have that in our game. We just cannot tolerate it. As Hart saying in the statement, it's a really concerning precedent. And as people have been laughing about it. What if Dunfermline go 1-0 up in the Scottish Cup final this weekend? Their fans just got to jump on the pitch and refuse to get off until they're awarded the trophy. I know how daft that sounds. I know how extreme that sounds. But this is the dangerous ground that we're all straying onto now.
We've got so many comments, honestly, so many. I'm struggling to keep up with them, but bear with me. Givaldo says, I'm a Hearts fan. I don't want my club going down this rabbit hole. Celtic won the game, but the 2 previous games at Fir Park need looking into. M. Liza says, the problem with this
down another rabbit hole.
they can go down that one. The problem with the whole narrative is that the media seem to be lumping everything together, celebrating on the pitch, alleged assaults, goading as if they're all the same thing, maybe some nuance. Richard says, I'm sure Celtic would agree to play at the final 30 seconds behind closed doors. A lot of Celtic fans defending their players about potential assaults. I mean, Rab's one here. Where is the proof? Celtic fans want proper evidence provided of wrongdoing. McKenna says, you cannot let the fans turn the end of a football game. And a lot of this one, Mick says that we are conspiracy mongers and he's never watching again. So we're sorry to lose you, Mick.
McDermott.
It's Mick, do you know what it is? That's his username. Top Cat says, with common sense decision from the referee to call it there, it's different if there's maybe 2 minutes remaining, but 20-30 seconds, Hearts had no chance. And I would just tack on at the end there just about the Celtic stuff. I got a lot of stick the other day, Keith, if you remember, for saying about Shankland, people goading him, how it was out of order, and I stand by that. It was way out of order for fans to come on and taunt him that. But I would just say, like you say, I think Tony Bloom needs to be careful. I haven't seen anything that I would deem as an assault on anyone.
I've seen skirmishes. I'm not neither a police officer nor a lawyer, so I won't get involved in discussions about whether or not any of what I've seen constitutes an assault.
No.
But I'd be careful of using language like that if I was Tony Bloom. Absolutely.
Well, look, I dare say we could talk about this all night, but should we maybe move on to football?
Yeah, let's
do that. The one thing I wanted to talk about that was in Record Sport Online today was your piece with Leon King, Scott. I thought it was a really good piece, definitely worth reading. Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, Players Player of the Year at Ayr United this season. But he's now a free agent, leaving Rangers.
He is. He's after James Tavernier, he's the last player for that 2021 title win under Steven Gerrard. So there's no one left now that Leon King is gone. And listen, Daniel, it was a good interview. I don't know about you guys, I'm genuinely interested, but I mean, I went and met Leon King and I probably had a perception of him in my head as being this boy who was like hailed as a real kind of wonder kid when he was younger, coming through the ranks at Rangers, but maybe kind of got too much too soon. And he got a big contract, I think, when he was 18, and obviously it hasn't really worked out for him the way he hoped at Rangers. And I just had an idea in my head maybe a big ego or whatever. But honestly, I mean, nothing could have been further for the truth. Really humble young guy. Amazing that he's still only 22 because he seems.
I'm stunned by that, Scott. I feel he's been around.
Unbelievable. He's actually still eligible for Scotland under 21s as we speak, which is just ridiculous because of the dates and stuff with the rules. But 22 years old, you talk about a kid, you forget 18-year-old get thrown into a Champions League campaign for Rangers under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. Played the six games in the Champions League against Ajax, Napoli and Liverpool. And again, I think that there's a kind of feeling that that kind of hampered him, that almost kind of ruined his career at an early stage because Rangers suffered some heavy defeats. If you remember, 7-1 at Ibrox, for instance, against Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. But Leon had a brilliant attitude, and rather than hinder his career, he thinks that will ultimately make it. He loved those games, loved being involved in it. He's had a couple of injuries that have kind of knocked him back. But as you say, he went to United last year in the Championship. Had a really good season, hoovered up all the Player of the Year awards. But his contract's up at Rangers now, so he'll move on. I just think it's really interesting to see where he'll end up. I mean, this was a boy, I remember speaking to people at Rangers when he was 15, and he actually made his debut for Rangers under 20s when he was 14, which is incredible as well. And they really looked upon Leon King as being he was going to be the one. He was going to be the one that came out of the academy and really excelled and made Rangers a lot of money and stuff like that. And obviously for different reasons it hasn't happened, but it's just going to be interesting to see where his career, where it goes for here. He feels he's really confident, feels he can play Scottish Premiership, maybe even higher, English Championship abroad or whatever. He's got ambitions to play for Scotland. And as I say, still 22 years old. And it's actually ironic that at a time when Rangers as a club, and Andrew Kavanagh the other day, are talking about signing Scottish players and people that know about the club and whatever. Here's a kid from Glasgow, knows the place inside out. He's been there since he was 5 or 17 years of his life.
Wow.
And yet he's going to walk out the door, obviously on a free. But I think, honestly, just for listening to him and speaking to him, seeing how well he did it here last year, I think he'll get a really decent move, and I wouldn't be surprised if his career actually kicks on and he does become a really good player.
He's been linked with Hearts, I think, as one of the teams. Hearts, and someone in the comments there saying about Calvin Miller being linked with Hearts. I think, Keith, they'd be two really shrewd signings if Hearts pulled it off.
Well, see, if Hearts go and sign Leon King and Calvin Miller, have they not just taken on Andrew Kavanagh at his own game?
Exactly.
Andrew Kavanagh comes out and says, well, Scottish identity, guys that understand it, Hearts go, Leon King and Calvin Miller, and you come. Calvin Miller's been a sensation this season at Falkirk.
It's been great.
And you look at the way that Hearts play, the importance of the wide players to the system. I think he'd fit in like a glove into the Hearts squad and very probably enhance the first 11. Leon King, I obviously haven't seen much of him over the last wee while. I would tend to think that the Champions League trauma that he went through, Scott, did damage him a little bit. I think it was too much too soon. He was too young for it, and he was thrown into a situation through a needs must scenario because Rangers were the walking wounded, weren't they? They had so little defensive options. But I think that would have been a really bruising kind of experience for anybody that was on the end of hidings like that, let alone a young, inexperienced centre half. Yeah. And it's what I'm taken aback by, and I think it's an interesting point, Scott, is that he's only 22. A centre half not really entering the prime years of their career until mid to late 20s. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing that he's had so much already at the front end of his career. And it does put him in a really good position now to kick on and do something else. You do wonder if Rangers have missed a trick, because even at 22, that's the sort of age you would be looking to have. Right, this boy can step into the first team if he's required. If he gets into the first team and he looks really good, he keeps his place. But nobody would be too surprised if a 22-year-old centre half comes in and out, dipped in and out, and just gains experience. And Rangers presumably, well, they wouldn't need to pay anything for him. They just need to give him a contract. That does seem like not in tune with what they're talking about, the need for more homegrown talent who understand the environment and understand the club. They've got one there, and he's about to go and sign for somebody else.
I think if Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen would be perfect for one of them. I really do. I've not seen him much, to be fair, but his profile and stuff, and as you guys say, trauma's the right word. I think Keith been thrown into those 6 games. Those teams were all excellent teams. They could have done that to any centre half, any teams, And
I think what it also did to him, Daniel, was probably a bit unfair. I think in the fans' eyes, I think if you say to Rangers fans now, I mentioned this in the piece, if you say to Rangers fans now, mention Leon King's name, and I said this to him, immediately fans just think of that Champions League campaign. No, that year when Rangers were decimated, Van Bronckhorst was struggling, and he had to throw Leon King and James Sands into the central defence to go up against these top European teams. No, when Rangers were miles behind your Liverpools and Ajax and Napoli. So I think it's been a wee bit unfair. I think fans just think, oh, we can't have Leon King. He was in the team that lost 7 against Liverpool and 4 against Ajax or Napoli or whatever. But no, that shouldn't define him. He was 18 years old at the time. And I think the way he's looking at it is just terrific experience. As Jacko said, to have that behind him, and he's played 50 games for Rangers first team. As I say, 6 Champions League, a couple of Europa League ties. He actually came on at Old Trafford under Philippe Clement as well. So he's got all that experience behind him at such a young age. I definitely think he'd be a good kind of pick me up for a team. They'll get them in a free, having been at Rangers that long. And as I say, I think there's a good chance he might kick on. I'm not saying go to the very top level, but I still think he could have a very good career. I also spoke to Scott Brown and John Rankin about him, who had him at Ayr, and they couldn't speak highly enough of him in terms of his attitude, professionalism, ability, everything. So honestly, I'm convinced he'll go in and get a decent move.
Be interesting to see. One guy we talked about last night, Keith, was Ollie McBurnie. It was embargoed last night. We couldn't really talk about Steve Clarke and his comments towards him, but it's come out today. And I mean, people have seen the clip. He seemed pretty raging when it came up and said that. You know, I thought the conversation between me and Ollie was private. He looked pretty fuming to me.
Yeah, I think as kind of hinted at last night, I think that conversation and the fact that Ollie McBurnie chose to make it public, I think he's really shot himself in the foot with that. And it kind of feeds into the narrative of this guy is prone to making bad decisions, whether they're on the park or off it. And given how badly Steve Clarke reacted to that, what's the chances of saying, "Aye, Ollie, come with us for 5 weeks in the summer, would you? I'd like your company."
Right.
So no, I think he's sort of killed his own chances there, whatever chances there may have been. I think the bigger line again, sorry Dan, but from the kind of embargoed stuff for Steve Clarke yesterday was about his own situation.
Yeah.
Again, you know, wasn't asked about it in the broadcast when it went to the Daily Boys. He was asked about his own situation. Is it going to be, you know, has it been sorted? Has it moved any further forward since we'd last spoken? He said, no, and this isn't about me, this is about the players. But I said to him, well, in fairness, Steve, you yourself personally said that you would prefer for this issue to be put to bed one way or the other before you step on the plane. And at that point, he said, well, that's what I'm hoping will happen. That's the schedule we're working towards. So that to me means that I would say next week, because he's obviously got the friendly at Hampden next Saturday. I think we'll know by the middle of next week, start to middle of next week, whether or not Steve Clarke is going out with a bang at the World Cup and moving on from the Scotland job, or if he signed a new contract and will lead us forward into Euro 2028. I think that's the most likely scenario, and I just felt from the way that he was speaking, see if he's not signing a contract or not really close to doing that, then I wouldn't have anticipated him saying, we'll know that's what we're working towards, because that sounds to me as if there'll be a meeting with Ian Maxwell next week and it'll all be signed off and announced and everything will be tidied up and put in a package before Scotland head to the States. I think if he wasn't on the verge of signing a contract, he might have chosen yesterday or used the days ahead of the game on Saturday to say, well, that's it, guys. I've made up my mind. I'll be moving on after this. I think it's more than likely now that Steve Clarke stays for at least one more campaign.
I don't know you, Scott. I'd be happy with that. I mean, I know he takes a bit of stick, Steve Clarke, and I can't see in the comments when we talk about it, he gets stick. I can't get it. We've qualified for 3 tournaments. We've all lived through the 20 years of wilderness, getting to tournaments, getting close, losing these horrible, qualifiers in Macedonia and Andorra or whatever. He's got us to 3 tournaments. Why would we get rid of him if he's wanting to stay? I hope he stays.
But the point is, Jacko, or my question to you and Jacko is: does the SFA feel they need to offer him a contract? I mean, couldn't the SFA just have said, look, we'll see where we are at the end of the World Cup, and listen, hopefully we're absolutely flying in the World Cup and we're through the group stage and into the knockouts and we're desperate to get Steve Clarke signed up on another deal. But I keep hearing this. The reason I'm asking that is I keep hearing this thing about they don't want it hanging over them, or don't want it hanging over the manager, the players. I don't buy that, because I feel as if when you go to World Cups and Euros, there's loads of international managers whose contracts are up at the end of that particular tournament. Understandable.
And they see it as the best possible short window.
Exactly.
To me, it's like, well, that's a
so let me flip that question on your end, Scott, right? Say we do go to the World Cup and we are, let's not say we're going to win the thing, we're relatively successful and relatively impressive at the tournament. And then we come back here and some club comes in with an offer that the SFA couldn't even think about matching, and we lose them because the SFA haven't been doing their job. How would you feel then?
I get that, and of course, if we had an outstanding tournament, you'd be a bit gutted at losing your manager. But I also think, but you're not telling me there wouldn't be a lot of fans out there who'd still say, well, look, you know what? A bit gutted at losing him. He's been here 7 years, 3 tournaments. He's done brilliant. He's earned a crack at a big club side or whatever. That's fine. We move on and get the next manager. And listen, that's not me I like Steve Clarke, and I think overall the job he's done, as Daniel touched on there, getting us to 3 tournaments, it's incredible. I mean, just could not have predicted that when he took over. And obviously the qualification for this World Cup that night against Denmark at Hampden, we've spoken about it a million times, but just unforgettable. One of the greatest moments I've ever had watching football that night. So you'll not forget that. But no, it has that's what 7, 8 years in the job. And if the World Cup goes badly,
we're having a very different conversation at the end of it, Scott. You're right.
If you've just handed Steve Clarke another 2-year or 4-year deal before the World Cup, and you draw one each with Haiti in the first game, punters only going to be happy. And
then you take a couple of sore ones against Morocco and Brazil, and you're one of the first ones home again. Yeah, I get it. Do you know what I would say, Scott? And maybe it sounds like I'm making a case here, and maybe I am. I think the players want Steve Clarke to stay. I think that they see him as their manager, that they see their Scotland careers as being largely down to him, if not entirely down to him. And this team isn't ready for breaking up. This team has got at least one more campaign together. Mm-hmm. And I think that they would prefer to do that under Steve Clarke. And I think it would probably give us the optimum chance of reaching another Euros.
Right.
And for that reason, if you're the SFA, you think about how many millions of pounds have come into the bank account after years of us, not having a pot to pee in because we didn't qualify for anything. Well, two Euros and a World Cup. Effectively, Steve Clarke's been like a golden goose for the SFA. Yeah. And I think, if this, and I do believe it to be the case, that the group of players he's got there would prefer him to stay for the next campaign. And if that's going to optimise Scotland's chances of qualifying and banking even more money from it, then, yeah, I completely see the sense of it. I tell you what, though, seeing as how we've got all this money, any chance that we can use some of it to get a good VAR system? That would be the essence. I mean, what a great legacy that would be if Steve Clarke, his successes with Scotland was what eventually paid for us to get a proper VAR system in place.
Any chance of getting the Wi-Fi fixed in the Hampden press?
Right. You know what is particularly bad at Hampden's brutal. Absolutely.
Really helpful.
We've got one last visit to the comments, guys. Some of them coming in are really good. Just to go back to The Leon King thing. John wrote in saying his brother Juan was a decent player. Thanks for that, John. Stephen writes in saying, can't wait for the World Cup. We aren't going to win it anytime soon, but we've taken a huge step in the right direction. It's all down to Clark. Scott says, would we rather Scotland went to the World Cup in a right good goal and beat 5-2, or be very defensive and lose a last-minute goal to go out with a whimper? Stephen says, if we feel 10 defenders against Brazil, do we put on a second goalie instead of a striker? Kyle says, totally agree, Scott. We haven't done great when we got to competitions. So a lot of opinions. I don't know why the SFA aren't falling over themselves to keep Clark, but that's just me.
Well, I think, look, do you know what, in all honesty, if this is correct and they do sign him up in a new contract and it's all signed and sealed before he goes to the World Cup, great. I'm all for that, right? Do you know what? It should have been done in March.
Aye.
We shouldn't be scraping around at this minute in time. What was it you were waiting for? What was going to change your mind? You either think in March that we want this guy, let's nail this down and give him the contract that he wants and get in. The other thing that I really like about Steve Clark is he pushes the SFA. Mm-hmm. The standards, the facilities that the Scotland team enjoy are greatly enhanced because Steve Clark fights his battles with the SFA. Maybe that's something. Maybe the SFA thought, I've had enough of this guy and his demands. But it's made our national side a far more professional outfit than it was before Steve Clark came in. And I think that's all part of this package as well. Anyway, I think it will end with Steve Clark signing a new deal next week. But it does say to me, well, why didn't you get that done months ago?
No.
This is poor that this whole situation has been left to just 3 or 4 days before he's actually packing his bags and getting on a plane.
No. Well, time will tell, and if and when there's news, you'll have it here first on Record Sport. The very last thing, guys, a few people have written in, good luck, Super John McGinn, tonight. Scotland's midfielder is captaining Aston Villa in a European final. Amazing for him. He mentioned the other night in the presser, John McGinn, when he signed, they were in the Championship, they were playing at Wigan and Rotherham and stuff like that. For him to be in a European final, and a lot of it's down to him. I mean, he's been their talisman. He's Aston Villa's all-time top European scorer now.
By the way, what about his performance against Nottingham Forest in the second leg?
Oh, brilliant. That goal.
I mean, and I'm watching that, and obviously through tartan tinted specs, you're looking at it going, oh, wow, this guy who's a real talisman for our side is right at the top of his game. Yeah. I think when we went to the Euros, his legs were buckling beneath him because he'd played so many games that season. He's had a little bit of an injury layoff this year, which should help because he hasn't put so many miles in the tank over the course of the campaign. And the performance he put on in that second leg against Nottingham Forest tells you physically he's in peak condition, but also in terms of his confidence, he's absolutely flying. That's the John McGinn I want to see going to a World Cup, because the John McGinn that went to the Euros last time, he did a funny dance and put on some lederhosen, and that was about that. He was nowhere near himself, and I love him to bits, and I hope that, but I'm sure that John McGinn would accept that himself. I want this John McGinn, this version of John McGinn. He looks as if he potentially could be a massive performer for Scotland on the biggest stage. You've got McTominay that's proven that he can do that. I really hope that Ben Gannon Doak is nearing the peak of his fitness after getting over the injury. I think we've got quite a lot to get excited about for this World Cup. And I think if John McGinn can go there tonight, Istanbul, lift a European trophy with Villa, wow. You know, you've got McTominay and Billy Gilmour that have done what they've done at Napoli. You've got Andy Robertson, who's done what he's achieved at Liverpool. John McGinn, he goes and lifts a European trophy. I mean, this is serious, boys. We've got a good group.
Aye, absolutely. And go on, Scott.
Sorry, Dan, I was just going to say, but to do it as captain, Jack, yeah. I mean, we both know John McGinn, it couldn't happen to a nicer boy, more kind of down to earth boy. So I really hope he does it. And just to be a Scottish player captain in a side, lifting a European trophy. I mean, that puts him into, if he goes and does it, that's you up there with Graham Souness, Billy McNeill, John McGinn, people. I mean, there's not that many Scots have lifted a European trophy. So for him, when you look at his career and everything he's achieved, for him to go and do that, I think would be absolutely incredible. And I totally agree with Jacko. I mean, he's banging form. Looks totally different to when he went to the last Euros. I totally agree that that wee spell out injured as I know for a fact that it gave him that wee bit of respite. He was able to work his way back, and you're just praying. You're right. You're praying we get to the World Cup, and unlike the Euros, your McGinns and McTominays. I mentioned this the other week. Even Billy Gilmour's no played that amount. A great amount of football. Lewis Ferguson, as we touched on with Bill McMurdo the other week, has been in and out of the Bologna team. Andy Robertson in and out of the Liverpool team. I'm praying that we turn up at this World Cup and there's a real freshness to us. Gannon Doak has hardly played with Bournemouth. Yep. Ryan Christie's no played every week. And normally you'd think, that's a bad thing, guys on the plane. It's not that they've been dropped or they're out in the cold. They're all involved at their clubs and still big players. They've just not played the volume of games. And you need to hope and pray that's to our advantage.
We actually could have one of the freshest first 11s at the tournament because of that.
Hopefully,
so look, here's hope.
Patterson, Hickey, another couple haven't played a lot. They should be ready to go as well.
That's right.
Freiburg is who Aston Villa are playing tonight, and they are a decent team apparently, 7th in the Bundesliga. And every time people in the
they've never won a trophy.
Never won a trophy.
Domestically, European, they've never won a single trophy. I'm really hopeful, fingers crossed, for John McGinn tonight.
Me too. Just last thing, Scott, and a few people saying Scott, can't believe none of the so-called bigger teams have signed him. Every time I see McGinn put it in the top corner in the Premier League, playing in the Champions League as well, and we see captain at Villa at a European final, I always think, how did Celtic let him get away? How on earth that summer? How did they let him get away? Just madness.
Crazy. Listen, similar to, we've spoken about Rangers with Lewis Ferguson and even Lawrence Shankland, but you're right. I mean, back in the day, it was Celtic with, was it Stephen Fletcher and John McGinn they should have signed at the time.
Yeah.
Couldn't get deals over the line, wouldn't pay the money, and must have lived to regret it, surely.
I'm sure it was the same summer Neil Lennon's come out and said they had Ivan Toney in the training ground ready to sign, and the same summer they're going for again, they didn't get either. So anyway, I won't I kind of worms there, but I think it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you so much for all the comments. Comments have been brilliant again. Massively appreciate it. And we'll be watching that Europa League final tonight. Good luck, John McGinn and Aston Villa. Keith, Scott, it's always an absolute pleasure.
Cheers, Dan. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, yeah. We'll be back tomorrow.
Yes, we are.
Well, the show will be on at 6, Keith.
Yeah. Whether or not you and I are on the show at 6 is a different matter. Let's just keep that up our sleeve for just now.
Right. We'll leave it. We'll leave as a surprise for everyone tomorrow. But for tonight, thank you so much. Thanks for watching, and as I say, back at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Hope you can join us then. Cheers.